The night was filled with the sound of chains. Iron links scraped against the stone floor as the cages rattled. The alien marketplace was alive with noise, shouts, growls, and the cruel laughter of buyers who had come to claim their property. Smoke from burning torches filled the air, and the scent of fear was everywhere. Inside one of the cages sat a young alien girl. Her name was Lyra. Her skin was pale silver, and her bright eyes, once full of hope, now looked empty. She pressed her forehead against the cold bars and listened as the guards barked orders. She knew what was coming. Tonight she would be sold. Around her, other girls cried softly. Some begged. Some stayed silent, too broken to fight. Each of them was destined for the same fate, taken away to serve as breeding stock for powerful masters. None of them had a choice. A booming voice echoed through the hall. Bring the first one forward. The guards dragged a girl out of her cage. She fought, clawing at the ground, but the guards only laughed. The crowd cheered, as if watching the game. The auctioneer raised his hand and shouted the price. Bids flew back and forth like knives. The girl screamed as a huge alien claimed her and dragged her away. The sound of her cries grew weaker until it was gone. Lyra's heart pounded. She gripped the bars so hard her knuckles turned white. This is my destiny, she thought. This is how it ends. One by one, the girls were taken. One by one, their futures were sealed. The crowd grew wilder, hungrier, as if feeding on despair. Finally, the auctioneer's gaze fell on Lyra. Bring her forward. He roared. The cage door creaked open. Rough hands grabbed her arms and pulled her out. She stumbled onto the stage, blinking in the torchlight. The crowd whistled, some cheering, some shouting insults. Her silver skin shimmered under the flames. And the auctioneer grinned. A rare one, he announced. Strong blood, young, untouched. She will make fine offspring for whoever can afford her. The crowd roared. Bids started high and only climbed higher. Lyra's chest tightened with every shout. She wanted to run, but the chains on her ankles kept her still. She lowered her head, praying for it to be over quickly, and then silence. The crowd shifted. Everyone turned to see the source of a new voice. A deep, steady voice. Different from the rest. I'll take her. The words cut through the noise like a blade. At the back of the hall stood a human. His dark coat was dusty from travel, and his face was calm, unreadable. Unlike the others, he did not shout or cheer. He simply raised one hand, his eyes fixed on Lyra. The aliens murmured. Some laughed. A human? Buying one of them? They mocked him, but the human did not react. The auctioneer narrowed his eyes. Do you have the credits? The human tossed a pouch onto the stage. It clinked with the sound of heavy coins. Enough to silence any doubt. The auctioneer grinned again. Sold. He slammed his staff against the ground. The girl belongs to the human. The chains on Lyra's wrists were released, and she was pushed toward him. She stumbled, her legs weak, and nearly fell. The human caught her arm gently, steadying her. She froze, waiting for the slap, the cruel laugh, the order to obey. But none came. He leaned close and whispered so only she could hear. His voice was calm, but firm. You're not my slave, you're free now. Lyra's breath caught in her throat. She stared at him, confused. Was this some trick? Some cruel game? Before she could ask, the crowd erupted in anger. Buyers shouted. Guards stepped forward, suspicious of the human's calmness. The auctioneer banged his staff, demanding order, but the hall was boiling with unrest. The human placed a protective arm around Lyra and began walking her toward the exit. The crowd parted, glaring, whispering. No one stopped him, yet Lyra's heart raced as they reached the edge of the marketplace. She glanced back once, seeing the cages, the broken faces of the girls still waiting. Then she looked at the man beside her. Who was he? Why had he done this? But before she could speak, The sound of boots thundered behind them. Guards shouted. The auctioneer's voice carried above the noise. "Stop them! The human cannot leave with her." Lyra's fear returned like a blade in her chest. Chains clattered as guards closed in from every side. The torches flickered, shadows dancing across the stone walls. The air grew heavy, filled with tension. The human didn't slow. His hand tightened on hers. "Run," he whispered. She hesitated only for a second, then obeyed. Together, they sprinted into the night, the sound of pursuit echoing behind them. Chase had begun. The night air was sharp and cold. Lyra's breath came in fast bursts as she ran, her chains rattling with each step. The human's grip on her arm was strong but steady, guiding her through narrow alleys and broken streets. Behind them, shouts echoed. The guards were close. "Faster," the human whispered. Lyra's legs burned, her body weak from weeks in a cage, but she forced herself to move. She didn't understand him. Why was he helping her? No one risked their life for someone like her. They turned a corner, the marketplace fading into the distance. The human stopped suddenly and pressed her against the wall. He raised a finger to his lips. Silence. The sound of boots thundered past, guards rushing in the wrong direction. Lyra held her breath, trembling, until the footsteps faded. Only then did she speak, her voice shaking. Why did you buy me?" The human looked at her. His eyes were strange, calm, steady, unlike the cruel eyes of the buyers at the auction. "Because no one else would," he said simply. Lyra frowned. "You risked everything for a lie. I am nothing but a tool, a body for breeding. That is my worth." His jaw tightened. "That's what they want you to believe, but you are not a tool. You are alive. And as long as you are alive, you can choose." Her chest tightened at his words. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Not even her own people. She wanted to believe him, but the fear inside her whispered louder. Before she could answer, the sound of steel rang out, swords drawn. The guards had found them. "Go," the human commanded. He pulled a small blade from his coat. It looked too simple, too small, to face so many, yet he stood his ground. The guards charged. Lyra screamed as one swung a heavy axe at his head. But the human moved faster than she thought possible. His blade flashed, striking the guard's wrist. The axe clattered to the ground. The fight exploded. Sparks flew as weapons clashed. The human fought with speed and precision, never wasting a move. Lyra pressed against the wall, frozen, watching him risk his life for her. But he was outnumbered. A guard's fist slammed into his ribs, knocking him back. He staggered but didn't fall. Another guard raised a spear, aiming straight for his heart. Lyra's instincts screamed, "Run, save yourself," but something inside her shifted. For the first time in her life, someone had treated her as more than property. He had whispered, "You are free." Her hands clenched. She couldn't just watch him die. She grabbed the fallen axe and swung with all her strength. The blade caught a guard's leg, sending him crashing down. The others turned, shocked. The human used the moment, striking hard, his blade piercing another's chest. In seconds, the alley was silent again. The guards lay motionless. Blood stained the stones. Lyra dropped the axe, her hands trembling. She stared at the human, her chest heaving. I helped you." He gave her the smallest nod. "Yes, you did." Her heart beat faster, not from fear, but from something new. Something dangerous. The human winced and pressed his side, where the guard's fist had struck. Lyra saw the blood seeping through his coat. "You're hurt," she whispered. "It's nothing," he replied, though his voice was tight. "We can't stay here." He led her deeper into the ruins, moving slower now. The city grew darker, quieter as they reached the edge of the marketplace. Finally, they slipped into an abandoned tunnel. The walls were damp, the air heavy with dust. Broken lamps lined the passage, long dead. It was a place forgotten by all, perfect for hiding. The human leaned against the wall, breathing hard. Lyra stood a few steps away, watching him. She wanted to ask 100 questions. Who was he? Why did he risk his life for her? Why would a human care about the destiny of a girl who was not even his kind? Instead, she whispered the only thing her heart could form. Why me? He met her gaze. His eyes were tired, but steady. Because if I didn't, you'd be lost forever. And I refused to let that happen. The words struck her like fire. For a moment, the chains on her ankles felt lighter. For a moment, she felt something she had forgotten long ago, hope. But the silence was broken by a distant sound. A howl. Low, guttural, and close. The human straightened, his hand gripping his blade again. His voice was calm but serious. They're sending hunters. Lyra's blood ran cold. She had heard stories of the hunters. Creatures trained to track and kill without mercy. If they found them, there would be no escape. The human turned to her, his voice low. Stay close. Whatever happens, don't run from me. She nodded, her heart hammering. For the first time, she wasn't afraid of him. She was afraid of losing him, and in that dark tunnel, surrounded by shadows, Lyra realized something terrifying her. Destiny was no longer chains. Her destiny was now tied to a single human who had refused to let her be broken. The sound of claws scraped against stone. The hunters were near. The real fight was about to begin. The tunnel was damp and endless, the walls dripping with water that echoed in the silence. Each drop sounded louder than it should, like a warning. Lyra walked close behind the human, her chains still clinking with every step. Her heart pounded. At the sound that followed them, the low growl of hunters. She had never seen them, but she had heard the stories whispered among captives. They were beasts bred for one purpose, to hunt and drag runaways back alive. The human stopped suddenly and lifted his hand. Lyra froze, every muscle in her body tense. Ahead, the tunnel split into two dark paths. He listened, tilting his head slightly. From one direction came only silence. From the other, a faint scratching. Claws on stone. They're close, he murmured. Lyra's chest tightened. She grabbed his sleeve. We can't fight them. No one survives hunters. He glanced back at her, his eyes calm, sharp. Then we don't fight. We outsmart them. He led her down the quieter path, his steps silent, controlled. Lyra tried to mimic him, but the chains around her ankles betrayed her. Each clink echoed down the tunnel like a signal flare. She winced, but he didn't scold her. Instead, he stopped and knelt before her without asking. He took out a small blade and slid it against the lock on her chains. A spark of metal, a snap, and suddenly the weight around her ankles was gone. She gasped, staring down at her bare feet. On the cold stone. You freed me. Chains slow you down, he said simply. Then he added softer, and you don't deserve them. Her throat tightened. For the first time in her life, she felt like more than a prisoner. But before she could reply, the tunnel shook with a new sound, a howl, close and deafening. The hunters had caught their scent. The human grabbed her hand. Move. They ran deeper, their footsteps pounding against the stone. The tunnel opened into a vast cavern, filled with broken mining machines and piles of rusted tools. Dust floated in the air like ghostly mist. This will do, he said, scanning the cavern. Do for what? Lyra asked, her voice trembling. Hiding. And fighting, if we must. He motioned for her to stay low behind a broken machine. She crouched down, her breath shaky, her silver eyes glowing faintly in the dark. She wanted to believe him, but the growls were getting louder. The human crouched opposite her, his blade ready. His eyes never left the shadows. For long moments, nothing moved. Only the sound of dripping water and her own racing heartbeat filled the cavern. Then they appeared. Two massive creatures crept out of the darkness. Their bodies were twisted, half wolf, half insect, with glowing eyes and jaws lined with teeth too sharp to count. Chains hung from their necks, rattling as they moved. Their claws scraped sparks against the stone. Lyra bit her lip to stop from screaming. Her whole body shook. She whispered, "We can't win." The human's gaze flicked to her. "Listen to me. They want fear. Don't give it to them. Stay low, stay quiet." The beasts sniffed the air, their glowing eyes sweeping the cavern. One turned its head toward her hiding spot. She pressed herself against the metal, holding her breath so tight it hurt. The human stood, stepping out into the open. The hunters hissed, their eyes narrowing on him. He raised his blade, calm, steady. "Come then," he said. The creatures lunged. Steel met claw. The cavern exploded with sound screeches, sparks, the crash of machines toppling. The human fought. With desperate strength, his movements sharp and quick, but the hunters were relentless. Lyra's fear boiled into panic. She couldn't just sit and watch. Not again. Her eyes darted to the tools, scattered on the ground. She grabbed a rusted metal rod, her hands shaking. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to hide, but something deeper pushed her forward. When one of the beasts lunged at the human from behind, Lyra swung the rod with all her strength. It struck the creature's head with a crack. The beast howled, stumbling. The human seized the chance, driving his blade into its throat. Black blood sprayed, and the creature fell. The second beast roared and leapt at Lyra. She froze, certain. She was about to die until the human tackled it mid-air. They crashed onto the stone floor, rolling. His blade slashed, its claws tore. Both locked in a deadly struggle. At last, with a final thrust, the human drove the blade deep into its chest. The creature twitched, hissed, then lay still. Silence. Only the sound of their ragged breathing filled the cavern. Lyra dropped the rod, her hands trembling. She stared at the human, covered in sweat and blood, his chest rising and falling. He met her eyes, and for the first time, she didn't see just a savior. She saw someone who was willing to fight to the end, not for himself, but for her. She crawled closer, her voice unsteady. You could have left me. You didn't." He gave a faint, tired smile. "I told you. You're free now. That means I don't leave you behind." Her chest ached at his words. She lowered her gaze, whispering, "Then maybe I'll stop leaving myself behind too." In the silence of that ruined cavern, with dead hunters at their feet, something shifted between them. It wasn't trust yet, not fully, but it was the beginning. The cavern was silent after the battle, but silence did not mean safety. The bodies of the hunters still twitched, their black blood spreading across the stone. Lyra sat with her back against the broken machine, her chest rising and falling fast. Human wiped his blade on a rag, his face calm, though his clothes were torn and blood marked his arm. He looked at her for a long moment, then said, "You're stronger than you think." Lyra shook her head. "No, I was just desperate." "Desperation doesn't swing iron into a hunter's skull," he replied. His tone was not praise, not soft comfort, but a steady fact. "You chose to fight. Remember that." The words settled in her chest like fire. For the first time, she wondered if maybe, just maybe, she was not as helpless as she had always believed. But her thought was cut short by a distant echo. Boots, voices, the guards were coming again. The human scanned the cavern, his sharp eyes searching for an escape. He found a narrow passage hidden behind collapsed stone. "This way," he said. Lyra followed, her feet slipping on dust. The passage twisted and dropped steeply until it opened into another chamber, smaller, darker, filled with broken crates and tools left behind by miners years ago. The human knelt and checked his wound. Blood seeped between his fingers, dark against his skin. Lyra's eyes widened. "You're hurt. You can't fight like this." He shook his head. "It will heal. Right now we need to prepare." "Prepare?" she asked, confused. "For the next attack," he said. Her stomach dropped. There will be more? There are always more. His eyes locked on hers. That's why you must learn. Before she could protest, he picked up a wooden staff from the broken crates and held it out to her. Take it. Lyra stared at it as if it were a snake. I don't know how to fight. Then you'll learn now, he said. Because fear won't keep you alive. Choice will. Her hands trembled as she took the staff. It felt heavy, awkward. He stepped close, positioning her grip. Not too tight, not too loose. Feel its weight. Make it yours. She swallowed, her silver eyes uncertain. And if I fail? His voice was steady, unshaken. Then I'll be there to cover you, but you won't fail. Something in his tone made her believe him. If only for a moment. He showed her how to block, how to strike, his movements slow and controlled. She followed clumsily at first, the staff slipping in her hands. But each time she faltered, he corrected her with quiet patience. Minutes passed, and her strikes grew steadier. Her breathing slowed. For the first time, she felt something strange in her chest, not fear, not despair, but focus. Then the sound came again. The tunnel behind them filled with footsteps. The guards had found their trail. The human's hand tightened on his blade. Stay behind me, and remember what I showed you. The first guard burst into the chamber, his eyes widening when he saw them. Lyra's body froze, fear locking her muscles. But then she felt the staff in her hands, his voice echoing in her mind. Not too tight, not too loose. Make it yours. The guard charged. She lifted the staff and struck blindly. To her shock, the blow landed across his jaw with a crack. He dropped to the ground, stunned. Her chest heaved. She had done it. The human struck down another guard, his blade flashing in the dark. But there were more, too many. Together, he said firmly. For the first time she moved beside him, not behind. When a guard lunged, she swung her staff low, tripping him. The human finished him with a swift strike. Another raised his blade. But Lyra blocked clumsily, enough to slow him for the human's counter. The battle was chaos shouts. Steel, blood, but through it all, Lyra stayed at his side. Fear still lived in her, but she pushed through it, strike after strike. Finally, the last guard fell. The chamber was silent once more. Lyra dropped the staff, her hands shaking. She looked at him, breathless. I fought with you. He nodded, his face unreadable. And you lived because of it. Her chest swelled with something she had never felt before, pride. But before she could speak again, one of the dying guards coughed, his voice ragged. She's the key. Don't let her escape. The masters want her alive. Lyra froze. The key? What does that mean? The human's expression darkened. He pressed the blade gently against the guard's throat. What do they want? With her? The guard only laughed weakly before the life drained from his eyes. Silence fell heavy between them. Lyra's skin prickled with unease. What did he mean? She whispered. Why do they want me alive? The human looked at her, his eyes shadowed. Because your destiny is bigger than chains. And now we need to find out why. In that moment, something fragile shifted. Lyra no longer saw him only as a savior. She saw him as a partner. Someone she could stand beside, not behind. And as the echoes of battle faded in the cavern, she realized something even more dangerous she wanted to. Asterisk. The cavern smelled of iron and smoke. The dead guards lay still on the ground, but their words hung in the air, heavier than their bodies. She's the key. Lyra's heart pounded. She hugged her arms to her chest, shivering though the air was warm. She stared at the human, her silver eyes wide. Tell me, what does that mean? Why did he say that about me? The human wiped his blade clean on a fallen guard's cloak. His movements were steady, but his face was hard to read calm on. The surface, but shadows moved behind his eyes. Because you are not just another captive, he said finally. Lyra's throat tightened. What do you mean, I'm no one? I was born to chains, raised for cages. My blood isn't special. He looked at her then, his gaze sharp, unyielding. That's where you're wrong. He walked to a broken crate and sat, his breath heavy. From the fight, I didn't come here to buy a slave. I came for you. Her breath caught. For me? Yes. He pulled a small device from his coat, metallic, humming faintly with blue light. She had never seen anything like it. He held it up, and it projected a faint image into the air. Lyra gasped. It was her. Her face, her silver skin, her glowing eyes etched into the projection like a ghost. Her knees weakened. How do you have that? Because I was sent, he said quietly. There are people who know the truth about this empire. About the breeding camps, the hunters, the auctions. They want it destroyed. And for that, they need you. Lyra shook her head, stepping back. No, that's impossible. I'm nothing. I'm broken. The human stood, his presence filling the small chamber. You survived chains. You survived hunters. And you fought beside me tonight. That is not nothing. Her eyes filled with tears, but she shook her head harder. You don't understand. I wasn't brave. I was terrified. I still am. He stepped closer, his voice lowering, steady but firm. Courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about choosing to fight while you are, and you chose. The words struck her deeper than any blade. She wanted to believe them, but fear still coiled inside her. Before she could speak again, a noise echoed from the tunnel, soft, deliberate. Not boots this time. Lighter, quieter. Someone was watching. The human's blade was in his hand instantly. He motioned for her to stay low. Slowly, he stepped toward the sound. A shadow slipped into the cavern. Not a guard, not a hunter. Something else. A figure in a hood, cloaked in black. The human's eyes narrowed. You followed me. The figure laughed softly, a cold, cutting sound. Of course. Did you think we wouldn't notice? You were never meant to leave this place alive. Lyra pressed herself against the wall, her body trembling. The cloaked figure's eyes glowed faintly red beneath the hood. The girl is important, the figure hissed. And the masters will have her, whether you bleed now or later. Lyra's chest tightened. Important? Why me? The human stepped. Between her and the figure, his blade steady. You'll have to go through me. The figure only smiled. Then you'll die with her. A dagger flashed in the dark. The human blocked it, steel clashing on steel. Sparks lit the chamber. The fight was fast, too fast for Lyra's eyes to follow. The cloaked figure moved like a shadow, striking from every angle. The human fought back with raw willpower, but the figure was skilled. One strike cut across his arm, another grazed his chest. Blood soaked his coat. Lyra's breath came quick and sharp. She clutched the staff he had given her, her knuckles white. She wanted to help, but what could she do against an enemy like this? The human staggered, barely blocking another blow. The figure pressed forward, hissing, "You can't protect her." No one can. Something inside Lyra broke. She had watched too many people suffer, too many people fall without fighting. Back. She would not let him fall, not him. She gripped the staff tighter and lunged forward with a cry. The blow struck the figure's back, surprising him. He stumbled, just for a second, but it was enough. The human drove his blade forward, piercing. The figure sighed. The red glow in his eyes dimmed. With a final hiss, the figure fell into the dust, motionless. Silence. Only the sound of their heavy breathing filled the cavern. Lyra dropped the staff, her chest heaving. The human leaned on his blade, blood dripping from his wounds. He looked at her, and this time his eyes were not only calm. There was something else, something almost proud. You didn't freeze, he said. Lyra swallowed hard. I couldn't. Not when it meant losing you. The words slipped out before she could stop them. Heat rushed to her cheeks. But he didn't smile, didn't tease. He only nodded, As if he understood, she looked down at the cloaked figure's body, dread crawling through her. He called me important. He said the masters would have me. Why? What do they want with me? The human's gaze darkened. He slid his blade back into its sheath. Because your blood carries something they fear. Her stomach twisted. What do you mean? He stepped closer, his voice low, steady, but heavy with weight. You are not their breeding stock, Lyra. You are their undoing. The cavern was too quiet after the fight. The cloaked assassin lay lifeless, but Lyra's mind replayed his words again and again. The masters will have her. She is important. Her blood is their undoing. Her chest felt tight. She wanted answers, but the human was bleeding badly. His steps were slower now, his breath uneven. We can't stay here, he said, his voice low. They'll send more. She nodded quickly, moving to support him, her small frame pressed against his side. For the first time, she wasn't only following him, she was helping him move. They found another passage, deeper underground. It led to a narrow corridor lit with flickering lamps, still burning from some old mining days. The air smelled stale. Heavy with dust, Lyra opened her mouth to ask more about what he had said about her blood, about the truth. But before she could, the world exploded in light. A trap, walls slid open, and steel nets dropped from above. Dozens of guards swarmed out of hidden doors, their boots pounding like thunder. The human shoved Lyra back, his blade flashing. But there were too many. A crack of electricity filled the air. An energy whip lashed across his chest, knocking him to the ground. Lyra screamed, reaching for him, but chains snapped around her wrists and ankles before she could move. No! She cried, thrashing. But the guards only laughed, dragging her forward. The human tried to rise, blood streaming down his face, but another blow slammed into him, sending him crashing against the wall. Lyra's heart broke at the sight. They had fought so hard, only to be taken again. The guards carried her into a massive chamber. It was different from the auction hall, darker, colder, filled with strange machines humming with power. At the center stood a massive glass cylinder, wires snaking across the floor like veins. Inside the cylinder glowed a pulsing light, sharp and unnatural. The chamber is ready, one of the guards announced. Prepare the subject. Lyra's body shook. Subject? She had heard whispers from other captives about this place, a breeding machine. Not for just one master, but for the Empire itself. A device that could force life into her body, drain her blood, and use her as nothing more than a living vessel. Her chains were locked into the machine. Cold metal gripped her arms and legs, pulling her upward until she was suspended inside the cylinder. The glass closed around her with a hiss, and the light grew brighter. Fear consumed her, but this time it was different. It wasn't only fear of her own pain. It was fear of what would happen if she gave up. Fear of what they would turn her into. She pressed her forehead against the glass, whispering, I am not your tool. I am not your destiny. Through the glass she saw movement. The guards dragged the human into the chamber, chains binding his hands. He was bleeding, half-conscious, but still struggling against them. His eyes met hers, even in his broken state, and she saw it fire. He wasn't giving up. And neither would she. The machine roared to life, wires glowing, energy sparking around her. Pain lanced through her veins, sharp and burning. She screamed, her body arching against the restraints. The guards watched coldly, their faces like stone. But deep inside her, something stirred. Something old, something powerful. Her silver skin shimmered brighter, her blood glowing faintly beneath it. The machine whined, its lights flickering as if unable to contain her. One of the guards shouted, She's resisting. Increase the output. The energy surged, slamming through her body. Lyra's scream echoed through the chamber, but it wasn't only pain now. It was rage. She remembered the human's words. You decide your fate. Her hands clenched into fists, her eyes glowing like fire. With a cry, she pushed back, not with strength, not with chains, but with something in her very blood. The glass around her cracked. The guards stumbled, shouting in panic. Sparks flew from the machine. The human, chained on the ground, forced himself upright. A faint, proud smile touched his lips as he watched her fight. The machine screamed, lights burst in one by one. With a final shattering boom, the glass cylinder exploded outward, shards flying in every direction. Lyra fell to the ground, her body weak, trembling but free. Energy still pulsed in her veins, glowing faintly under her skin. The guards stepped back, fear in their eyes now. The human pulled against his chains, his voice hoarse but firm. Lyra, now! Her chest heaved, her staff long gone, but she didn't need it anymore. She rose slowly, her glowing eyes fixed on the guards. For the first time in her life, they looked at her not as prey, not as property, but as something they feared. She whispered, her voice low and steady, I am not your destiny. And then she moved. The chamber was chaos. Sparks rained from the shattered machine, wires whipped like snakes, and the air buzzed with the smell of burning metal. Lyra stood in the center, her silver skin glowing faintly, her eyes like fire. Around her, the guards hesitated. A moment ago, they had seen her as a tool. Now they looked at her as if she were a weapon they could not control. But even as she stood tall, her body trembled. She was weak, drained from fighting the machine. Her knees nearly gave way, and then she heard his voice, Lyra. The human was still chained at the edge of the chamber, blood on his face, but fire in his eyes. He pulled against the restraints with all his strength, refusing to fall. You are not alone. Fight with me. Her chest tightened. That was the difference. She wasn't alone. Not anymore. The guards regained their courage. With a roar, they charged, weapons raised. The human braced himself, waiting for the strike he could not block. But before the blades reached him, Lyra moved. She snatched a broken chain from the floor, swinging it with surprising strength. The metal wrapped around a guard's throat, pulling him down. She spun, slanting her elbow into another's face. Pain shot through her arms, but she did not stop. The guards swarmed, but she was no longer a caged girl. She was free, and she fought like it. Still, there were too many. She could not hold them all. One raised his spear high, ready to pierce her back. The human broke his chains. With a shout, he tore the restraints from the wall, blood dripping from his wrists. He staggered to his feet, grabbing the fallen guard's blade. His movements were heavy, his body battered, but his will was unstoppable. He struck with fury, cutting down the guard before he could reach her. Now they stood back to back. Her with her chain, him with his blade. Two against an army. And for a moment, it was enough that the fight raged. Guards screamed. Steel clashed. Blood sprayed across the floor. Every strike, every block, every step was not just survival, it was defiance. Lyra's arms ached, her body screaming with pain, but she refused to stop. She felt his presence behind her, steady, unyielding, and it gave her strength. But then, a thunderous voice shook the chamber. Enough! The guards froze. A massive figure entered the room, the warden of the breeding chambers. His armor was black as night, his eyes glowing red. In his hands he carried a weapon too large for any normal being, a staff crackling with energy. Lyra's breath caught. The guards stepped back, bowing their heads. The warden pointed his staff at her. The girl belongs to the masters. Return her to the machine, or all will suffer. The human stepped forward, placing himself between her and the warden. His voice was steady, sharp as a blade. She belongs to no one. The warden laughed, a sound like grinding stone. You are only one human. Do you think you can stand against all of us? The human's jaw tightened. He glanced back at Lyra, his eyes locking onto hers. One human is enough. The words struck her like lightning. The warden roared and swung the staff. Energy crackled through the chamber, knocking guards to the floor. The human was thrown back, slamming against the wall. Blood dripped from his mouth, but he pushed himself up again, his blade still in his hand. Lyra's chest burned. She saw him stagger, barely able to stand, yet still facing an enemy he could never hope to match. Not for himself, but for her, and something inside her snapped. Her blood glowed again, brighter than before, pulsing like fire through her veins. The broken shards of the machine around her began to vibrate, humming with the same strange energy. Warden turned, his red eyes narrowing. Impossible. Lyra lifted her hands, the light spreading across her skin. For the first time, she did not fight the power inside her. She embraced it. The chamber shook. The machine's remains sparked and burst, sending arcs of energy that struck the guards, dropping them to the floor. The warden raised his staff, but she raised her voice, steady and unbroken. I am not your tool. I am not your destiny. I am free. The energy exploded outward, a wave of light that shattered the staff in the warden's hands and hurled him back. He crashed against the wall, his armor cracking, his body motionless. Silence followed. The guards who still lived scrambled to their feet, fear in their eyes. None dared move closer. In the center of the chamber, Lyra stood, her body glowing faintly. Her chest heaved, her knees weak, but she remained standing. The human walked to her side, his body battered, his face pale, but his eyes filled with something fierce. Pride. He touched her shoulder lightly. You chose your fate. Tears filled her eyes. She whispered, No, we chose it. He gave a faint smile, the first she had ever seen. Around them, the chamber lay in ruins. The machine was gone, the warden defeated, the guards scattered. For the first time, the breeding halls were silent. Lyra looked at him, her voice trembling but strong. You didn't just free me. You changed me. You showed me what it means to fight, to live. He met her gaze, his voice low but certain. No, you showed yourself. Humanity only gave you a spark. You lit the fire. Her chest swelled at his words, and as they stepped out of the broken chamber together, leaving the ruins behind, one thought echoed in her mind. If one human could defy an empire, what could all of humanity do to the galaxy?